What's up, y'all? I'm Spade, and this is my review of The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, 2022. Now, right off the bat, I gotta say, I did enjoy this movie for the most part. There are some things that I didn't agree with or that I thought could be improved, and there are some cool things that I did want to discuss further within the movie and just surrounding the overall lore. Now, this is going to be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, go check it out. It's out on digital right now, Blu-ray, 4K, Ultra HD, however you want to watch it. Go check it out, then come back and finish the rest of this video. First, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I liked in the movie. Then I'm going to talk about some of the things that I think could have been improved on, some of the things that I didn't like. Then I'll just discuss a bit about the movie, go a little bit more in depth into my own personal thoughts about the movie, and give you my overall rating out of 10. So let's get started. The first thing that I really did appreciate about this movie is the tone. That it was dark, it was gritty, it was realistic, but it was still a little bit comic booky. To me, it felt like the right mixture of the Nolan films and the Tim Burton films. I really liked the aesthetic of Gotham in this movie. I thought that the city had its own personality. I really felt the desperation in the people living in Gotham. And I really enjoyed the opening scene with Batman and his opening monologue, showing various parts of the city, showing that the criminals are afraid of the shadows. They think Batman's gonna come out of the shadows and get them. And I just like seeing the overall depiction of the crime in the underbelly of the city of Gotham. I think a lot of people said that in the Nolan films, Gotham kind of lacked a little bit of personality. And in this film, I feel like they hit the nail right on the head. Gotham is gloomy, it's gothic, it's dark, it's raining, there's an overtone of red. And you just get the sense that everyone in the city is kind of down on their luck and kind of in a dark place and hoping for a better day. I'm really happy that we got a mature Batman movie, that the movie is mainly focused on Batman. I do have a little bit of an issue with the way they portrayed Batman in this movie, and I did feel that some things were kind of rushed on that part, but I'll get into that a little bit later on. I thought all the actors in this movie did an amazing job. Robert Pattinson killed it as Batman, Andy Serkis killed it as Alfred. Zoe Kravitz was actually one of my more favorite characters in this movie, and she did an absolutely amazing job as Catwoman. Colin Farrell absolutely killed it as the Penguin. Gotta mention the makeup, of course, which was an awesome job to make him look like that. Paul Dano was the Riddler, really brought it with the intensity. I really felt like he was a psychopath, and I really got that serial killer vibe from him. I especially liked the interrogation scene between him and Batman in Arkham Asylum. I thought that the acting and the chemistry between both of those actors was dope. I thought Jeffrey Wright was perfect in the role of James Gordon. I thought the role really fit him very well. Also, a bit of a surprise, but really good in the role, was John Turturro as Falcone. And I think the entire cast of this movie just did an awesome job. Another thing I wanted to add was that I loved seeing Batman in action. I loved seeing clear shots of Batman going at it with guys, taking down bad guys. I liked seeing wide shots of Batman fighting dudes and doing his thing. As a hardcore Batman fan, I really liked that we got to see him do his thing as a detective. I really liked that we spent a lot of time in the nighttime, in the darkness, and with Batman in costume as opposed to him as Bruce Wayne. Couple standout scenes for me were the beginning monologue where Batman's describing a little bit about his past and what he's been up to for the last 2 years. I really dug the first fight scene in the club when he goes to, I think it's the 60 Below club, when he breaks in and fights through all the guys to get to Penguin the first time. I thought that was an awesome sequence. The car chase was pretty crazy. It was realistic, it was gritty, but again, I do have some problems with that I'll circle back to later. And of course, the ending where Batman comes down from the rooftop and takes on all the Riddler's goons. I thought that was a dope scene, and I really liked seeing Batman kick some butt. Probably my favorite two aspects of this entire movie were number one, the cinematography, and number two, the soundtrack. This movie just looks amazing. Every single shot is dope. I really like that Matt Reeves takes his time on shots, really lets the audience feel the atmosphere and the setting that we're working in. The character design, the costumes, the framing, everything just came together so nicely. And the soundtrack had a great blend of being triumphant, being dark, being light, and even a little bit romantic at times. And I really dig Michael Giacchino's score in this movie. It's really dope. Now, overall, I really like the story that this movie told. I like that it paints the Waynes in another light other than being the saviors of Gotham. I actually really did think that they were going to go for the whole Court of Owls storyline in this movie when that happened. I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't push it that far, but I think there is still potential for that in the future. And while I think the Riddler's plot could have been a little bit more complex and the riddles a little bit harder to solve, maybe have a little bit more to the riddles, more steps, or have Batman do a little bit more legwork to solve them. I also really liked Batman's personal story in this movie where he starts off as a symbol of vengeance, literally being equated to the shadows by the criminals in the city. When we first see him, we actually hear him before we see him, and he just obliterates a group of guys. I don't know if they're Joker thugs or really what kind of gang they're supposed to be. I thought that was pretty interesting. But I like the aspect of the story where Batman had to move from being this symbol of vengeance and fear into being a symbol of hope. And I thought that that whole journey and character development was really cool. However, I do think they could have spent a little bit more time on Batman personally. I do think we get more information about Selina Kyle and Catwoman and her whole backstory and her character arc. But again, overall, I don't really have any major problems with the story or with the journey. I think it makes sense. I think the actors did a great job. I think the writing works. And the dialogue isn't too bad, though at times it can be a little corny. And just overall, I think it works. I don't see any major plot holes in this movie. I don't have any real major problems with the story. It wasn't silly. It made sense for the most part. Now, I'm going to get into some of the things I didn't like about this movie. So I mentioned before that this film is very Batman-centric. We get a lot of Batman, but there is a lack of Bruce Wayne, and I felt that the movie kind of hurt a little bit for it. I would have liked to see a little bit more of Bruce Wayne, find out a little bit more of why he does what he does, what's driving him. I think that since Batman is such a cultural icon that this movie counts on the viewer to make up their mind about why Batman is on this crusade, since we already kind of know so much about this character from so much past media. Kind of in the same way they did it in Spider-Man Homecoming, where they didn't explicitly tell you his motivation or what happened to him to cause him to become Spider-Man and take up that mantle and do what he does. I think the filmmaker just expects you to make that up in your own mind, which I don't think is too much of a problem, but we literally don't get any kind of idea of why he's going down this path. At one point, Alfred and Bruce, very early on in the movie, do have a confrontation where Alfred is telling Bruce that, being Batman is going to destroy you. Bruce is telling him, hey, you're not my father and I don't care. And I do think that this was a little bit rushed, and because we don't have any backstory or any build up to that moment, it is kind of empty and it didn't really work for me. The relationship between Bruce and Alfred in this movie comes off as more of almost a relationship between brothers instead of a father figure and a son, or even as a caretaker and a younger person. The other thing is they don't explain any of Batman's gadgets. In Nolan's trilogy, they do go at great length to show you what his gadgets are made from or how his gadgets are adapted from real world technology into, Batman use, I guess. In this movie, we do see he has a grappling hook, he has his batarang, he has his bat suit, which unrealistically blocks a lot of ballistics. He's taking sniper fire, machine gun fire, shotgun rounds, just all at point blank range, and we don't really get an explanation of how this is being done other than the fact that his suit is bulletproof. I think I would have liked them to explore that more and kind of give us a how of how he's able to do all this stuff. Why is he not feeling the impacts of such heavy ballistic fire? And just show us maybe some of his gadgets that he's using, how he designed them, maybe how he develops them. It just would have been nice to see that. Another thing about Batman himself that I didn't really dig was his wingsuit in this movie. The way he glides looked kind of corny. He looked more like a flying squirrel than he did a bat. And again, when he dove off that rooftop and used his wingsuit, he ended up hitting a bus, hitting a concrete overpass, falling onto concrete, tumbling, and he kind of got up and just walked it off like it was nothing. To be honest, to me, that impact, that looked like it hurt. For the most part, I did enjoy Robert Pattinson as Batman, but I do feel like he could have brought more intensity to the role. I do have to admit, I was expecting a little bit more from Robert Pattinson. I was expecting something that was gonna kind of wow me. Unfortunately, I didn't get that. He played the role very normal. He just seemed really calm all the time when he was Batman and when he was Bruce Wayne. There wasn't a huge tonal shift in the characters like with Bale or with Keaton per se. So I was a little bit disappointed by that. Paul Dano, while again, he did a great job, I feel that sometimes he was a little bit too much. He should have held back a little bit more. I didn't really like the fact that he would start yelling out of nowhere, or he would kind of seemingly lose his mind. There seemed to be hints of Heath Ledger's Joker in there. And to be honest, I really don't like when they try to make every character the Joker. I think that the Riddler is a little bit more pathological. I think that he should have engaged Batman in a battle of wits rather than use Batman as a pawn, which I still think is a cool idea and is acceptable, but I just think it could have been done better if they did it that way. And I really wasn't feeling the inclusion of the Joker in this movie. I think that they should have left him out completely. I'm glad that they deleted that scene with him and Batman talking. You can check it out on YouTube, on the internet, somewhere, wherever it is. I just think it was too early for that, and it was a little out of place as well. I wasn't really feeling Barry Keoghan, I think that's his name. I wasn't really feeling his Joker laugh or his performance. I don't think it's all the way there yet. Maybe it could still use some work. Hopefully he has time to work on it and perfect it. I know this is a very early iteration of the character. I do feel like the studio forced that play. The Joker being one of the more popular characters in Batman's rogue gallery. I feel like maybe the studio heads were like, hey, let's throw this in there, kind of throw the fans a bone and keep them on the line, so to speak. The major flaw with this movie, I think, is the pacing. This movie is long. That's no secret. It's almost 3 hours long, if not that. I do think that some stuff could have been cut out of here just to make it flow a little bit better. Maybe add in a little bit more action beats or a little bit more mystery and intrigue with the riddles. Another thing that I didn't really think was necessary was have the levees break at the end of the movie and put the entire city in jeopardy. I think that's a cheap way of raising the stakes. I did really like the shot of Batman leading everyone out from under the rubble with the flare though in the water. I thought that was a dope shot, one of the doper shots of the movie. But I think that on its own, Joker, the Batman, the reveal about his parents and fighting all the guys at the end, I think that it was enough without the city flooding. Though it's not a make or break thing for me, it's just, it's a personal thought. One last problem that I did say I was going to circle back to was during the car chase with Penguin, Batman and the Penguin kill a hell of a lot of people, or at least severely injure them. And I just thought that was very uncharacteristic of Batman, just to kind of plow through civilians like that. I know Batman doesn't kill and all that, but he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would blow up an oil tanker and an entire highway full of innocent people just to get one guy. So I thought that was a little bit ridiculous. All right, so my final thoughts on The Batman. Overall, I thought this was a pretty decent Batman movie. A lot of fan service, dope cinematography, great acting, dope soundtrack, a lot of cool moments. However, there was some awkward and cheesy dialogue. A couple things felt rushed and messy. I think we could have got a little bit more characterization of Batman, which goes to say that the writing was a little bit sloppy, and there were a couple of corny things in there as well. So my rating for The Batman is 7 out of 10. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. Speaking of comments and social media and all that stuff, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your busy day to watch this review. Usually I just type these out on my social media accounts and share them. A lot of people were really liking them and interacting with them, so I decided to shoot a video this time. So I really hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully I can improve and make them better from here on out. If you guys like hip-hop music, boom bap music, that's something I do as well, so I'll leave a link to my music as well in the description of the video. I'll leave a link to my website as well if you want to check that out. I got some merch going on, I make beats, I do all kinds of stuff. Now before we go though, let's have a little bit more of a discussion about the movie itself, some of the lore, DC Comics, the DC extended universe, all that good stuff. So again, I'm really happy that a movie like this exists. I am interested in seeing a sequel to this movie, or maybe, I don't know, a spin-off or some kind of derivative movie. I do know that they're making a show and it has something to do with the Penguin and Gordon and Gotham PD, and I do think that that is a cool idea. I hope that they're open to using Batman in the show. I really don't like when they make properties that are derivatives of Batman stories but don't involve Batman, or they have to write around using Batman. I think that those stories and those shows kind of suffer from it. I really liked that this was a more mature and more almost adult-oriented movie. It wasn't afraid to take its time with things, explore things, have the characters chew the scenery a little bit, and it involved a lot of little minor details, and you really had to pay attention in this movie and be engaged with the movie to enjoy it and get the most out of it, I feel. And I really like that the film respects the audience enough to give us something like that. That being said, I know that these characters have to appeal to a large age demographic from, 3 years old all the way to 65 years old. But I like the idea of having a split where we can have movies that are for everyone and then movies that are for a more mature audience, because I think we are lacking those more mature stories in these days and times. One last thing I wanted to talk about regarding this movie was at the end there, it looked like Batman injected himself with a little bit of venom, not symbiote venom, obviously, venom from DC Universe, which is what Bane uses. When he grabbed that green vial and injected himself with it and beat up that Joker guy, I just think it was a little too green and it made him go a little bit too crazy, and I don't know, that opens up a lot of doors just for a lot of cool stuff. So I do hope to see more of this Batman, more from Matt Reeves, and more mature DC stories. So again, thank you for watching. Hope y'all enjoyed it. See you next time. Peace.